Yeah.
Dark of winter, soft and still, your quiet calm surrounds me. Let my thoughts go where they will, ease my mind profoundly, and then my soul will sing a song, a blessed voice of love eternal. Gentle darkness, soft and still, bring your quiet to me.
Good morning and welcome. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of New Bern. I am Gail Davis, and I am delighted to be your service leader this morning. Thank you for joining us in our building today in person or via Zoom. Reverend Charlie Davis will be our speaker, and our music today will feature guest musicians, James Smith, Jim Bice, and Joanne Friedman. I would like to thank our dream team, technical team that makes our services possible. Today, we have Stephanie Jones, Tom Shoup, and as always, Mike Sagasar, who does so much behind the scenes work to make our services possible. May I draw your attention to our memorial candle. This is lit in remembrance of Renee Barnwell. She passed away, died on Friday, December the 17th. Yes. I would ask you to hold her in a moment of silent remembrance, please, in our thoughts and our hearts. Again, I want to welcome any visitors or people who are returning for the second time. If you are present and would feel comfortable to stand, introduce yourselves. We would like to give you a special welcome. Please.
Hello, my name is Paul.
Paul? Paul and your
April.
April. Paul and April, welcome.
Paul and April. We moved here in the summer from the mountains of North Carolina. And we like it here. And we've been New Year's before, so we're having fun here.
Well, welcome, Paul and April, here from the mountains. We hope that you will stay and visit us again. And after the service, there are very light refreshments. We hope you'll enjoy those as well. Thank you. Is there anyone else today? Finding none, I will move on to our announcements. First, I would like to tell you about next week's services. There will be celebrating the solstice, the return of the sun. It's a good time to reflect on the people who have been the lights in our life in big or small ways. You have an opportunity to acknowledge someone who has been a light in your life or is still a light in your life. And if you have a photograph you would like to share in the service, please send it to Stevie Jones. She will include that in the service, okay? So if you're interested in doing that, we'd like to thank those who have already sent in their pledges for 2022. And we would like to end the year to get the pledges in before the new year. So if you are waiting on doing that, you've got 1 week. Those pledges in. You are all welcome here, whoever you are, whoever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey. Your long and winding road has led you to our door, and you are most welcome here. We ask you to pause a moment, calm your spirits, prepare your hearts for this morning's service by listening to our morning prelude, Solstice Night. It was used by permission from our dear friend, Michael Lewis. Enjoy.
When the winter comes, the snow falls bright, and the red sky warns of the coming night, and the ground is cold and hard, and the fox stays home. When the cold sets in with the bitter frost, and the sun won't shine, for its face is lost. Still the wind through the trees does blow, and the branches sing, and my heart is warm. The snow, the quiet and the cold, and the wind when it blows. On solstice night, night is long, but the dark is lit with a full moon song, as it shines on the silent snow, the white silent snow. There's a hungry cry from the hooting owl, with its ragged wings, it is on the prowl, and it swoops right through the moon, and it carries a load, and the night is cold and still, and the stillness grows. The snow, the quiet and the cold, and the wind when it blows. When the winter comes, the snow falls bright, and the red sky warns of the coming night, and the wind through the trees does blow, and the branches sing, and the night is cold and still, and the stillness grows.
Our chalice lighting today is by Denise Levertov. Praise wet snow. Praise wet snow falling early. Praise the shadow my neighbor's chimney cast on the tile roof, even this gray day that should, they say, have been golden. Praise the invisible sun burning beyond the white, cold sky, giving us light and the chimney's shadow. Praise God, or the gods, the unknown, that which imagined us, which stays our hand, our murderous hand, and gives us still in the shadow of death our daily life, and the dream still of goodwill on earth, peace on earth. Praise flow and change, night and the pulse of day. Our hymn this morning is Every Night and Every Morn.
Every night and every morn, some to misery are born. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight. Joy and woe are woven fine, clothing for the soul divine. Under every leaf and vine runs a joy with sweet intertwined. It is right and should be so. We were made for joy and woe, and when this we rightly know, safely through the world we go.
Charlie and I lived in Kenosha, Wisconsin for many years. And while we were there, we had a next door neighbor who had a plant that we had a bit of compassion for. We never quite figured out if it was a magnolia or a rhododendron, but it used to curl itself tightly to the house and kind of snuggled up to the dryer vent where the warm air came out. The reading today reminds me of that plant. It's by Robert Frost. There are roughly zones. We sit indoors and talk of the cold outside, and every gust that gathers strength and heaves is a threat to the house. But the house has long been tried. We think of the tree. If it never again has leaves, we'll know, we say, that this was the night it died. It is very far north, we admit, to have brought the peach. What comes over a man? Is it soul or mind? That to no limits and bounds he can stay confined. You would say his ambition was to extend the reach clear to the Arctic of every living kind. Why is his nature forever so hard to teach? That though there is no fixed line between wrong and right, there are roughly zones whose laws must be obeyed. There is nothing much we can do for the tree tonight. But we can't help feeling more than a little betrayed that the northwest wind should rise to such heights just when the cold went down so much below. The tree has no leaves and may never have them again. We must wait till some months hence in the spring to know. But if it is destined never again to grow, it can blame this limitless trait in the hearts of men. Our presentation today, Embrace the Dark. Reverend Charlie.
An old saying goes, when darkness falls, you can either curse the darkness or light a candle. But there is a third option. We can embrace the darkness. Winter solstice is the darkest time of the year. 3 nights from now will be the longest night. The ancients burned fires to help the light return, and the Yule log is a sacred symbol of safety. The mother goddess awaits the return of the sun king. In ancient times, people despaired the deepening passage of the sun. The air chilled and the planets and trees lost their leaves, insects disappeared, along with some kinds of animals. What was once vibrant with the songs of birds and the scents of flowers and berries was now a desolate time of deathly cold. Although the winter is long, the spark of hope remains, and the sun will return again to warm the cold earth. Born anew from the depths of darkness, we see that we too can find our rebirth if we follow the example of the holly, mistletoe, and evergreen. That passage is from the Athens area covenant of UU pagans. But really, when we think of it, darkness has been increasing since June, our last summer solstice. Winter solstice is the culmination of darkening and darkening and darkening. And so the solstice means the beginning of days getting longer. So here comes the sun might be a solstice tune saying, yes, here it comes. We don't see it, but we know it's coming. But just think of the summer solstice. We don't do that type of thing. We don't look for some dark to hold on to the dark, to cling to the sacred dark during the summer. And in the dark solstice, we often point to, and we'll be pointing to next week in our service, about the light. But before we do that, I want us to settle in to the dark. The dark is not evil, and the light is not inherently good. There's no heroes in white hats and villains in black. Don't be afraid of the dark. Not all is gloom and full of doom. There will be no black marks made against you. So much of our language equates dark with evil. Recently, I heard someone say that segregation is a stain on the pages of American history. And that very language suggests that something darker does not belong on the pure driven page. But the relationship between light and dark are not antagonistic. They're cooperative. It's the black ink that transforms the white page into a history book. The blank page provides a place of rest for the flowing ink of our thoughts. Night and day are both parts of the 24 cycle we call day. Every night and every morn, some to misery are born. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight. The yin-yang symbol of Chinese religions was developed in part by measuring a shadow cast by a pole upon the ground during the course of a year. The shadow is longest at the winter solstice and shortest in the summer when the sun is high in the sky. From the Chinese fortune calendar.com, I read this quote. The light color area which indicates more sunlight is called yang. The dark colored area has less sunlight, more moonlight, and is called yin. Yang is like man and yin is like woman. Yang wouldn't grow without yin. Yin couldn't give birth without yang. Yin is born at summer solstice and yang begins at winter solstice. In both the ancient European and ancient Chinese culture, dark is seen as the female aspect. And in patriarchal societies, dark is also seen as the lesser aspect. And in racist societies, the dark is considered inferior. So the longest night tends to be celebrated only because light is returning. But I want us to remain in the dark for a while. Among intellectuals, remaining in the dark is called ignorance. But I say remaining in the dark is the only way we can learn about things we cannot see. It is the way to uncover secrets, even those that we keep from ourselves. Listen to these words from a website called Tending Sacred Circles. Darkness is on her face and over the surface of her waters. Seeds are resting in the depth of her womb. Animals are searching out their shelters. Darkness is cold and felt in bodies and souls as the temperature continues dropping. Feel the cold and see the long, great darkness stretching before us. 'Tis the time of hibernation, entering the darkness, entering the cave in ourselves. Ever wonder why people close their eyes to pray? That self-imposed darkness takes us away from the material world. Psychologist Carl Jung described the shadow and the need to look at the shadow self. The shadow is a psychological term. It is everything in us that is unconscious, repressed, undeveloped, and denied. These are the dark, rejected aspects of our being, as well as the light. So there's a positive, undeveloped potential in the shadow that we don't know about, because anything that is unconscious, we don't know about. The shadow is an archetype, and that simply means that it's typical for everyone. Everyone has a shadow. Even those people you admire so much and you think can do no wrong, they too have a shadow. We all have a shadow. We have our public face, and we have our general image of who we are. But there are parts of ourselves that we know are there, but we try to look away and we try to forget. But they will come out sideways if we don't look at them directly. The first thing we have to do to see our shadow side is to take 100% responsibility for our lives. This is a very difficult thing to do, and no one does this overnight. So we have to be patient with ourselves. Sure, things happen to us, things that are beyond our control, things that actually put real limitations on who we are. We have no control of that, but we have 100% responsibility for what we choose to do next. Being human, we have all had many painful, difficult experiences where it clearly looks like it's the other person's fault or bad luck in life, whatever we want to call it. So taking this responsibility of what comes to us is no easy task, but it's well worth the effort, because when we take responsibility, we regain some control. We can learn and grow from experiences and make new choices for ourselves. Changing our attitude from blame to responsibility will change what happens next in our world. Our destiny is of our own making. Even if we fail, we have the satisfaction that we died trying rather than just giving up. Solstice demands courage to face the dark. What will we find lurking there? It's easier to blame someone else. What we hate in others is often what we are afraid to see in ourselves. If we shout that someone else is racist loud enough, perhaps no one will notice our own discomfort with these issues. If we say that others are evil loud enough, we might ignore that the same capacity exists within ourselves. What struggles do you have to face? Maybe you have less patience with children than you ought. Maybe you're uncomfortable with your sexuality. Maybe we can't admit that we were wrong in that painful argument so many years ago, and we're going to have to face that person again in the holidays. But winter also brings about some tangible physical fear. Material things. What if I lose power in my house? Will I freeze? Will the food in my refrigerator spoil? Will I starve? If we lose our electricity, we say we have lost power. Think of those words. To lose power. When have been those times in your lives when you felt you had no power? And solstice can remind us of our powerlessness. We cannot stop the movement of the earth and the sun and the universe. But the most powerless person is the one who is unable to admit they are vulnerable. We are most powerless when we need help and are afraid to ask. By facing that shadow and knowing that you need help, that you're not self-sufficient, that I can't do everything, that gives us the power to reach out and ask others to help us. When we're in the dark, we think we are alone. So we have to use our voice to call out and trust that someone will answer. Darkness is an invitation to self-knowledge. Do you like being alone with yourself? What is lurking inside you? There may be a skeleton in your closet or undiscovered treasure. We should not let the fear of the darkness prevent us from going there. Monsters are often less scary when we confront them. When we run from what frightens us, we are merely adding fear of the unknown to the list of our fears. If we admit weakness, our dark side, it is less likely to surprise us at the wrong time. We eventually need to love the dark side of ourselves. Just as night cannot be separated from day, as winter turns to spring, our weaknesses are merely flip sides of our strengths. If we're passionate about someone, and that's a strength, but it runs the risk and the shadow side of being obsessive. If we're nice to everybody, that has the shadow side of being insincere. If we are serious, we risk being joyless. If we are always logical, we risk being without emotion. And if we're always compassionate, always looking to help the other one and ignoring all our own problems, it comes across as patronizing. Unless we look at our shadow. If we are spontaneous, that's always fun, just be able to do something at the spur of the moment. but that has the shadow side of being chaotic. If we are strong, if we are leaders, that has the risk and the shadow of being domineering. So we have to always be aware. And if we're agreeable, we go along, we risk being overpowered by evil. So it's impossible to avoid the dark, because whenever you are doing something, every action has an equal and opposite reaction that also must be accounted for. Eventually, everyone wakes up in the middle of the night. Do you like who you are alone in the dark? Before you turn on the light, before you reach out to someone nearby, or your cat, or your dog, before you call out into the darkness, do you like who you are alone in the dark? When I was younger, I tended to be very extroverted. I wanted to shine like the sun. I even sought a profession where I'm the center of the attention. Hey, look at me every week, Sunday morning. It's the Charlie Davis Show. But as I've gone older, especially in this time of COVID and quarantine and going into my cave, I've gone more and more into my cave internally. And I find I need to be there in order to recharge. I need that part of me that is not the public part of me. That part of me that has problems, that part that needs to reach out to other people, that part that I sometimes don't even like to admit is a part of me. I would love to have all the answers. But I must learn to love the doubts. For doubts lead to better answers. I would love to be a fountain, an endless source of compassion. But to do that, I must love the part of me that needs to be cared for. Solstice reminds us that there are good things in the dark. There is stillness, the opportunity to listen. There is gestation, like a seed in the womb of the earth. There is restoration, like sleep. And we see things like stars, which are hidden by the light of day. And we see aspects of ourselves which are hidden by the busyness and the toil of each day. The dark is often synonymous with the unknown. And we are tempted to fill it with our fears and be anxious about it, or flood it with light so that we never have to fear it. But we have to reconcile ourselves to how far the unknown transcends what we know. Instead of manically manicky, trying to just make everything bright and cheery all the time. To accept the reality of the ebb and flow of light and dark. Knowing that the longest night journeys to the lengthening day, there's much to learn along the way. Let us sit and listen in the stillness and darkness. The darkness is a blessing. May we bless and be blessed.
Thank you, Reverend Charlie, for that thoughtful message. And we are very grateful for those who have been watching us from home. We look forward to the day when you will join us here in our fellowship hall, and we can all be together. This concludes our live stream.